Welcome to Challenger Deep, athletes rising above adversity, where we explore stories of athletes who've faced their lowest points and risen to incredible heights. Did you know Challenger Deep is the lowest point in the ocean, making it the lowest point on Earth? When you're at your lowest, the beautiful truth is there's nowhere to go but up. We all face adversity, but how we choose to respond defines who we become. Join hosts Jeff Hagee and Tammy Matheny as we share powerful stories of everyday athletes' resilience, growth, and triumph. These stories will inspire you to rise above your challenges and reach new heights. Let's dive in.
All right. Thank you guys for joining us for our latest episode of Challenger Deep Athletes Rising Above Adversity. Today, I'm extremely excited to have good friend, good colleague, Chad Busick join us. So welcome, Chad, and tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, Tammy, Jeff, it's so good to see you guys again. I know we've been friends and colleagues for a couple of years now, so thanks for having me on the show. And just to give, let me start at the end. So currently today, I have a company called Championship Mindset. I also have a podcast that I host that's called the Championship Mindset Podcast. And most of my time is spent as the VP of Athletics with the John Gordon Companies, where I have the opportunity to work with college athletic departments, coaches, teams, student athletes all across the country, really doing workshops and delivering things like Energy Bus, Power Positive Leadership, Power Positive Team. But the cool thing is that while I get to do that now, and this is something that I've always wanted to do, it wasn't always that way. I knew I wanted to do this back when I was a junior in high school in Southern California. And so I got my degree in psychology and wanted to do sports psychology. And I went to a small school in San Diego at the time. Sports psychology was kind of an emerging field. And so I went to the school, get a master's in sports psychology, and a year and a half into the 2 year program, the school went out of business. And that was the first major blow. And I know we talk so much about adversity. That was the first one. It was like this plan that my wife and I had just gotten married 2 years before that. We moved to San Diego. We had no jobs. We had one car. We knew nobody. And then all of a sudden, the life that I thought I was going to have wasn't there. And it sent me into another um, career. I spent 11 years in the mortgage industry. And then after another change in university, and I think we'll dive more into that, got back into coaching, spent 10 years coaching competitive soccer in the San Diego area, and then stepped away from that about 10 years ago to really focus more on leadership, culture, and mental skills with teams. And that's how we got connected.
Awesome. You've had a lot of adversity in your career. So let's start by telling us your definition of adversity. When you hear that word, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, it's a great question, Tammy, because I think it's evolved over the years, and I think that happens a lot with maturity and as you go through more events. I think early on you kind of don't really even think about adversity. You just kind of it just finds you in life, and you have to realize what you're going to do in that moment when things don't work out the way you thought they were going to work out. And so my definition today really is kind of evolved into this. I expect it. I know it's coming. And so because I have that expectation that things aren't always going to go my way in life, I've prepared a different mindset towards it. And so when I'm in the midst of it, I'm looking for that perspective. We talk a lot in the John Gordon companies about E plus P equals O, and that's event plus perspective determines the outcome. And so often we only see the adversity, we only see the event. And so when I'm going through those as best I can, and I don't always get that right, I'm looking for the outcome. I'm looking for how is it going to make me better? Where's the opportunities within that to create a better outcome? I always like to tell athletes that I work with, we will all go through adversity, but not all of us grow through adversity. And that's the real key to adversity, is not just going through it, it's growing through it.
I love that definition, Chad. And, in our book, Athletes Rising Above Adversity, That's the whole idea that we want to portray, is that you need that adversity to show that you are capable of being successful, of rising to the occasion.
Hey, this episode of Challenger Deep Athletes Rise Above Adversity is brought to you by doTERRA, the world's leader in essential oils and wellness products. Are you ready to fuel your health and recovery like a pro? Listeners of this podcast can get 25% off all their doTERRA products and supplements. Head to the link in our show notes or go to confidentathleteprogram.com/doTERRA and start your journey to peak performance today.
So share with us, I know you talked a little bit about your journey. You had this career path and then adversity smacked you dab in the face. But share a little bit more about that adversity or other that you faced as it's led you to where you are today.
Yeah, that was really a life-changing event in a lot of different ways. Obviously, from a career perspective, but I had built up an incredible, successful career in sales and sales management. I was one of the probably top five account executives in the entire country in that company. And honestly, I mean, I on the outside, you would think I had it all. Right. I had, plenty of income. I have two houses. I had a boat. I had all of these things and I was making more money than, and this was 20 some years ago. And you'd think you had it all. And then everything changed in that moment. And the mortgage industry as a whole really went through a change. And I remember I was actually on vacation and I got a call from one of my best friends who was in the company at the time as well. And he said, "Hey, we are going to free our lines to be our access to money to be able to fund loans for mortgages is being frozen. Now it's being frozen, but we believe that we're going to be able to right the ship. It's only going to be a little bit of time, and then we're going to be back on track." And that's the message that I heard, and that's the message that I believed. And it didn't end up to be that way. Days turned into weeks, weeks turns into months. And for 3 months, I sat paralyzed. I mean, they still paid me a small, like, base salary, but we couldn't fund anything, and I was commission based. And so for 3 months, I sat there paralyzed, thinking that they were just going to turn the faucet back on. And then after 3 months, the company went out of business and they closed it down completely. And I learned a very important lesson in that moment, that I was never going to put myself or my family in a situation that when adversity came, when challenges came, I was going to sit back and let the circumstances dictate my response. And to me, that changed everything in that moment. And I went on and continued, in a different industry into sales. But here's one of the cool things: that had that event not happened, I wouldn't be talking to you today, because it wouldn't have happened. It was because I switched careers. I started to focus on the different things in my life. It wasn't all about just driving success and making as much money and things like that. I really kind of got back committed to my faith. That was a big important part during that time. I focused more on my family, and really trying to be the best husband, the best father that I could be. And I went back to coaching. I got back to coaching, and I started coaching my daughters first. And I coached for 10 years in competitive soccer. And so to me, that was a real defining moment as I look back. And I've seen, and maybe we'll get into it in the call, like, other adversities that I've faced, and how much I learned in that has changed how I handle adversity today.
You know what I really love about that, right from your definition, that how you handle it and how you grow through adversity, but at the same time, going through your own experience. So many people, it's so easy to gain that victim mentality when you face adversity. And like Tammy was saying, the whole idea of our book is we want to show athletes that, you know, a lot of these people that they look up to so much, they've gone through adversity and they figured out how to rise above it and they grew through it, like you were saying. And so, like you said, how you were going to take control for you and your family if you're ever faced with adversity again, I think that's such an important lesson to learn here.
Well,
Yeah,
either move.
absolutely, Jeff. And I will tell you, it's continued today. And now I help others go through that adversity. So just last week, in fact, later today, I have a college that I've worked with before. college athletic department, and they just announced a couple of weeks ago that their school is closing at the end of this year. And they have so they have to come back and they have to do a year worth of school. They have all these games, all these schedules, all these things, but they know that everything ends in May of next year. And so I did a session with them, and it's one of my favorite sessions to do. It's something that I did even with through COVID. And it goes back to the idea that when we're in the event, we don't see the perspective. But to your point, Jeff, we've all gone through adversity. We've all gone through difficult times in the past. And so, one of the great ways to help people in the present is to take them to the past. Right? So, one of the activities we do is we ask them to identify 5 major changes that they've experienced in their life. Now, we ask them to identify 5 because we want them to have some flexibility because we're going to ask them to share with the team or the group one of those. So some of them may be a little bit too personal and they may not want to share. So that's why we ask them for 5. But then we ask them to share with the group what was the change that you went through? What made the change so difficult or challenging? We talk about the feeling. So how did you feel before, during, and after the change? Right? What were the keys or key to success in helping you get through that change? And then what did you learn from that past adversity or challenge that will help you today? And it's incredible when we do this activity. You have people who have survived cancer, right? You talk about one of the athletes the other day shared that she lost her dad at 17. I can't even begin to imagine what that would be like, right? And loss of loved ones and all these challenges. And here's the crazy thing. There are 3 main takeaways in all these workshops and all these sessions that I've done with teams. And I've had an opportunity to do this with 3 teams that lost current members of their team that were killed in car accidents. You talk about adversity, you talk about challenge, and these are football teams and baseball teams, these big, tough, strong, major ego guys. And we're out there talking and sharing about these activities. But here's the thing that I would share about that. 3 things. First of all, we all face major challenges, just like you said, Jeff. But even though we don't have the same experiences, we all have the same emotions that we go through when we experience those things, right? The emotions of fear and anxiety, and we have denial and acceptance and anger and all of those things. Right? So we may not have the same experience, but we can always relate on the emotional level to how we go through that. Right? The second thing is that when we go through those challenges, no one talks about surviving it themselves. It's always a dependence on others, whether that's their faith, whether it's their friends, family. Somebody comes alongside you to help you get through that adversity, right? And then the last big takeaway as I hear these stories and all these major challenges is when you look back on it, you almost look back on it in a positive light. Like you would never ask to go through those things, but you see how it's helped shape you and make you the person that you are today. So when we keep those 3 things in mind in the present by looking at the past, it can help us get a better future.
Yeah. And, I love that. It's kind of like the lesson instead of the loss. I mean, we look at things that have happened, and often the first mindset is, oh gosh, I lost that. Or even if we just lost a game, instead of, okay, what is the lesson from that? So I love what you just shared there. And I think it ties into what I have kind of created and shared in several books and what we build a lot of our stories around. It's the circle of success, where to overcome any adversity, you have to have unity. You just mentioned that. You have to get through it with your faith, with friends, with teammates, family. Um, right-minded focus, which again, focusing more on the lesson, and a confidence, a collective confidence. And those 3, kind of feed off each other. But at the center of it, that drives it all, I have your why. And I know you're big on that. I know we talk a lot about that with John Gordon Company. Um, so tie in, first of all, I want you to share your why you do what you do, the bigger picture, but how that's important in helping uh, you and others rise above adversity.
Yeah, it's such a great question because I truly believe it's the why. We get so focused on the what we have to do and the how the heck we're going to get it all done that we forget the why, right? And the why drives it all. And so I love that. I have my logo for Championship Mindset is a triangle for that reason, because the top of the triangle is the what that you want to do, right? The vision, if you will. The bottom right of the triangle is the what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, the day to day that you need to do. And then the bottom left is the why, the purpose behind that, right? And so it drives it all. So I really filter my purpose through an acronym that's my life word. It's called focus, right? It's focus. And so when I look at my why, the F is for family, first and foremost. I have to be a good husband. I want to be a good husband, a good father, take care of my responsibility at home, first and foremost. I have an opportunity to work with amazing teams, but I got to be good there first, right? The O is for others, that we can focus on others to help them be the best versions of themselves, right? The C is for Christ. My faith is important to me. Christ has to be at the center. Jesus has to be the center of that. If he's not, then everything else is going to fall apart. So I've got to have that taken care of. The U is for unseen. We see so many people that focus on the seen, the shiny objects, the money, the title, all of those things. I want to focus on the unseen, and that's really from a Bible verse from 2 Corinthians 4:16 and 18, which is that what is seen is temporary, and what is unseen is eternal. And so I really focus on that. And then the S is for self, that I got to take care of myself mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, all of those things. And so that becomes the filter. And when you talk about your why, to me, it's not just about what you say yes to, it's what you say no to. Right. And so when I filter out my why, and I have a lot of things that I could chase, and a lot of things and opportunities, but if it doesn't fit into that focus mindset, then I need to say no to it. And so that drives me to do all the things that I do, and to try to meet and be the best I can for everybody that I interact with.
I love that analogy of helping with your why. That's tremendous. Thank you for sharing that, Chad.
So as we talk about specifically for athletes, and you've talked about working with teams and the different adversities that they've gone through themselves, what is the approach you take? Because like we said, I loved how you talked about how often we'll look at it in reflection in a positive tone, that we wouldn't want to go through it again, but looking at the experience, it was so positive. It's so hard to do that in the moment. You're going through the adversity, and it's like, yeah, thanks, Chad. I know one day I'm going to look at this positive, I'm sure. But in the moment, how do you coach them through that?
Yeah, it goes back to my why. It's one of the things that why I do what I do, because when you look at athletics, when you look at sports, it's the one area in our culture, in our world, that allows people to still fail, right? Everything else, we try to eliminate failure from every other experience in our life. It's uncomfortable and we don't want to deal with it. But sports, you can't play sports without having failure. And to me, that's it. Now, when I work with the teams, I want to help them win. And I have great stories of teams that I've helped win championships, and they've, worked with us and all of those things. But you know what? I want them to win at the things that really matter. I want them to be champions in all aspects. The biggest compliment that a group that I could ever get from working with is that how they became better people, better husbands, fathers, wives, mothers, because of the experience that they had within that. When I work with teams, I say all the time, and it came from Patrick Gilliam. He's the women's soccer coach at Wheaton, and I love what he says. He said, when college athletics is done right, it's a 4-year experience with a lifetime impact. That's it, right? That's it right now. Now we gotta, if we just sell them that only, well, we're going to lose them, because we need to help them win now, because that's what they're there and that's what really drives them. But to your point, Jeff, that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're using sports. Sports is what brought us together. Now, how do we make a difference going forward in the rest of their lives? And I think we see that all the time, that teammates become people that I tell teams all the time, you're going to do life with these people for the rest of your life. These are the people that are going to stand up in your wedding. They're going to be there when you go through adversity. and you're in a really tough spot, they're the ones that are going to come help you through it.
I love that.
That,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, usually we get a book, and my apologies that you don't have a copy of Challenger Deep Athletes Rising Above Adversity. But I know you're familiar with the first Challenger Deep, and I know you were tremendously helpful in me in providing some stories, and I even had um, a short version of your book, The Rock Tumbler, in there. But share another story from the Challenger Deep that you use to help others with adversity that really resonates with you.
Yeah, it's actually not my story, but Tammy, you and I, we talk all the time. We're always sharing stories back and forth, and I love the rhino story. I'm already starting to share that story. I was just blown away, and it's just that camaraderie, that collectiveness that we all kind of make each other better. And so this story really came from a good friend of ours, Thomas Williams. And Thomas is an amazing person, and he was a former NFL player and does a lot of amazing things. But he tells a story about when an old lion gets really old and there's nothing else that he can do, right? He can't see anymore. He can't hunt. He can't, run. He can't do anything. But there's one thing that he can still do really, really well, and that's roar really loud. And so what they do is they take the male lion, they put him on one side of the prairie, and they got all the prey in the middle. And then they put all the young lion and lionesses on the other side and around it. And when everyone's in position, that old lion lets out that ferocious roar. Well, what does all the prey in the middle do? They run. And where specifically they run? Away from the roar, right? Right to the waiting jaws of all the lions and lionesses, right? And here's the moral of the story is that what would happen if they ran towards the roar? They'd all get out safely. And when we face adversity, and this is why I love this one so much, and I share it with almost every team that I work with, because everything we want to accomplish in sports and in life is on the other side of that roar. Everything that we want is on the other side of that roar. And we need to learn to have courage to run towards the roar because that's where we want to go. And it's hard, it's not easy because when that roar happens, that adversity comes for us. We want to either freeze or we want to run the other direction. And I think that's the key is we have to be better coaches, mentors, and leaders that help people run towards the roar because everything they want to accomplish is on the other side of that roar.
So I
That's
know
such a
we have
great
some
story.
listeners listening. Sorry, Jeff, to interrupt you there, but I was just thinking, if I'm this young athlete that isn't used to adversity, I'm hearing you tell me that I need to go like find adversity and run toward it. Is that what you're telling the listeners out there, or?
Well, I think that, we have to be realistic there, right? I'm not telling the listeners go out like, man, where's the adversity? Like, I got an eight line lane highway in front of me, and I'm gonna go find the adversity because I'm gonna play Frogger. Now, I realize a lot of your athletes that are listening to this have no idea what Frogger is and what game it was, but go Google it, and we'll figure that out.
Awesome game.
But
Awesome game.
yes, exactly. I don't need to go finding and actively searching for adversity. I believe that it will find us just because we live in a broken, fallen world and it's coming for us, right? But it doesn't mean that we can't be prepared for when it does come. So I think there's a line there between preparing ourselves for the storm, but also understanding that we don't have to go seek out the storm. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yep.
perfect. I just knew there would be a listener out there thinking, am I supposed to go play Frogger or, like jump off a cliff or something?
Yes.
But you put that
Yeah,
great, Jack.
there's plenty of adversity coming from you for you. As I wrote in my book, The Rock Tumbler, we love the mountaintop experience, we love the championship moments, we love all those things. But reality is very little of our life is spent on the mountaintop. Most of our life is spent either heading into a challenge, in the midst of a challenge, or coming out of a challenge, right? So don't go seek them. You'll have plenty of them, trust me. And if you don't have one right now, enjoy the mountaintop.
One of the things I'd love you just to touch on too, and I think just everything you've talked about is probably the answer to my question here, but we're talking directly to athletes. What about coaches? As what advice would you give to coaches as they're preparing their teams to deal with adversity? And I know, yeah, everything we've talked about, but is there anything specific that, not only when they face adversity, but kind of what your message just there was of preparing to face it?
Yeah, we have a great activity that I love to do with teams, where we get them together. Because at the beginning of the season, right, everyone's positive, everyone's on board. We haven't played any games yet. We haven't had any adversity. We haven't lost. We haven't had any injuries and things like that. And so the best time to plan for the challenge and is when you're not in the challenge, right? So the activity that we do is we break them up in small. Well, first of all, we say, okay, what are some challenges that we are either facing or that we expect to face this year? And we put them up on the board and we identify those. And then we break them into small groups and we give each group one of those challenges. And we say, okay, now here I want you to come up with as many opportunities that you can find in that challenge. So let's take injuries, for example, right? That's a big one that we deal with in athletics. And so often when the injury happens, and I know, Tammy, you and I just had this conversation because of your new book coming out, right? And I love this concept, but we all we can see is the injury. But there's a lot of opportunity in those moments. So, injuries, for example, well, it's an opportunity to grow in other areas. If you have an ankle or a knee, well, you can get stronger in the gym by working your upper body, right? You can get stronger on the soccer or the sport specific IQ by studying film and doing things that you normally wouldn't do if you were completely healthy. It's an opportunity for other players to step into different roles and responsibilities. There's all of these opportunities. And so by doing this activity with these teams and having all these challenges that we think we might face, now if we don't face them, that's amazing. We don't have to deal with that. But now when that challenge happens in the season, it's not this, oh crap, what do we do? It's no, no, no. We thought this might happen. Here's the things we should be looking for. Here's the things we should be focused on right now. And here's how we're going to make it better. Is that helpful? Because I mean, it's
Absolutely.
it's one of my favorite activities to do, because it kind of gets them automatically anticipating it, being prepared for it. So in the moment, they can quickly make that transition from being stuck in the event to helping to shape their own perspective.
Yeah, no, I love that because when you prepare for it ahead of time, it makes it that much more strategic on how you're going to respond to it rather than just react. And that's something that Tammy teaches a lot too. I've always, when you teach visualization, visualize the positive and all these things, but spend some time through that visualization, how are you going to respond to negative things? And I think that's powerful. So thank you.
Yeah, I just made myself a note to add that to teams. Like Jeff mentioned, I do that with one-on-ones of, all right, list every, possible challenge or the scenarios that make you uncomfortable, write out how you want to respond when that happens, and then visualize it. But I love as a coach taking that, you know, to a team and having a team do that. So thank you for sharing that, Chad. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. Well,
So
give us, go ahead, Jeff.
I want to, he started a plug here. I want to just add to that. Tell us a little bit about maybe an upcoming book on injuries.
The injured athlete, we're hoping at the end of this month, if not at the beginning of August. And it's about adversity. And, Chad mentioned it. Um, just the mental game plan. I think too often when we're injured, we think it's completely physical. But there's so much to the mental side of recovery and helping athletes bounce back, not just coming back, but coming back even stronger mentally and physically. And I don't think there's too many guides that help us with that mental part. So that's what I'm hoping to add to that. But we'll
Excellent.
we'll be sharing more about it. So, but thank you for bringing that up. As far as plugs, I want Chad to plug himself and how everybody can hear. But before we do, before we go to that, Chad, is there any other story, anything else that you would like to add to this? I know, we've had many talks and we could talk about adversity all day long. But anything that you would like to add here before we do close and you share how people can find you?
Yeah, I would probably say the rat story is the story that I tell the most with pretty much anybody I work with. And it really fits nicely into this challenge and conversation about adversity. And so years ago, a psychologist did a study on rats, and he wanted to see how long rats could swim. And so he dropped them in the water, he started the timer, and he watched them. And what he found is that some of the rats, they gave up and they drowned in as little as 4 minutes. Other rats, they were fighters, they hung on a little longer. They made it about 10 or 11 minutes and they drowned. And he thought that was really interesting. So he decided to do the experiment a second time. And this time well, he had to get new rats first of all, but so he drops the rats in the water and he starts the timer and he watches them carefully. And just about the time where they're going to give up and they're going to go underwater and they're going to drown, he picks them up, he holds them, he rescues them, and then he drops them back in the water. I know, poor rats. It's not the point of the story. Stay with me. He drops them back in the water. Do you know how long those rats swam when they went back in the water? Those same rats that were ready to give up and they were ready to drown, they were exhausted. Those same rats, some of them swam as long as 60 hours. 60 hours. And they were going to give up in 4 to 10 minutes. Why? Because they had hope. They learned in that moment when they were being held that if I just kept swimming, maybe my circumstances would change. Maybe someone would intervene, someone would come along. We'd get some calls going our way if we're on the field, we'd get, some momentum, whatever it may be. And that's the key. We will all face adversity. We will all face challenges. We just have to keep swimming. Just keep swimming. Keep your head above water because better days, I truly believe that, are ahead. Now, I don't want to just leave it there because there's a really cool part of that story that I need to share as well. And I share with a lot of teams. And sometimes teams get me in trouble because I tell them this, like when things aren't going our way, we have to keep swimming. But in an athletic event, we know that when you have a team on the ropes, when you have them back against the wall and they're going through the adversity, sometimes you just have to drown the rats. Sometimes you just have to hold them under and put them out of their misery. Because in the world of athletics, you give a team hope and now you deal with them forever, right? You have to deal with them the entire rest of the game. And Tammy, Jeff, I will tell you, I had a team that I worked with. And we're getting a little off track, but it's too good not to share. All right. I had a team that I worked with a couple of years ago that won a national championship. They were 38-0. The Indiana Wesleyan women's volleyball team won their first national championship. And I was getting ready to work with them in the second year. And the coach sent me a message and said, "Hey, Chad, can you tell me the rat story again?" I said, "Why? You guys already know this." Well, evidently, the president of the university was talking to one of the girls on the team, just talking about the run and their championship and just all the experience and stuff like that. And he was looking at their national championship ring. And he wanted to know why Drown the Rats was engraved in the inside of their national championship rings. Right? It's those moments, right? It's those stories that really bring it to life.
Oh, yeah.
And I just set five national championship game, teams on the cusp of winning their first national championship. I think it's like 13-9. And the other team calls their last time out. There's a huddle. They're getting ready to break the huddle. Coach is giving the last instructions, and one of the players from the bench stands up and goes, "Ladies, it's time to drown the rats."
I love that. And,
That's awesome.
Chad had shared that with me. I guess it was a few weeks ago when we were on a call together. But, you know, the impact that story has to me is so more profound than just telling the message. And it really goes to the power of stories and learning from others and what they did. Because if we've seen another team do it, another athlete, hey, there's hope. kind of like that rat. There is hope that you can do that as well. Chad, I could talk to you forever and sharing these stories. But share with us where people can connect with you and find you.
Yeah, absolutely. We just a couple months ago redid the website, so you can catch me at chadbusick.com. Gives you everything that you need to know there. There's all the links to the podcast episodes. There's all the links to the stuff that we're doing with the John Gordon companies, teams that we're working with. So that's really a great place to start. The book is on there. You can find the book on Amazon and other sources like that. And then all my socials, you can connect with me there. X, I guess, not Twitter, but X and Instagram are at Chad Busick. And then you can also find me on both Facebook and LinkedIn at Chad Busick. So, so I should say under it, the X and Twitter are Chad_Busick at Chad_Busick. So just so make sure that we get that clear. But yeah, reach out. There's everything we can do. I'd love to talk to teams. If there's something I can do to help support you as athletes, as teams, but more than willing to talk to you about that. But Jeff, Tammy, thank you guys so much for having me on. And I agree, Tammy, we could go on and on about just these conversations. I love what you guys are doing, how you're, living into your why and your purpose to help athletes, help teams. And so I appreciate our friendships and value so much what you guys do.
Well, thanks, Chad. Always appreciate having conversations with you and having you share everything you can with our audience. So thank you. For those that are listening, if you don't have Challenger Deep Athletes Rising Above Adversity, you can get it on Amazon, tammymatheny.com, or go to jeffhagee.com/free book, and you can get that if you just pay the shipping and handling. Also, Tammy, do you want to talk about our gear?
Yes. So I have one of the shirts, the Confident Athlete. Jeff and I just have launched this the past month. But you can go to www.tammymatheny.store. Jeff, I know you have a link. It goes to the same place as well, but we have lots of the Confident Athlete shirts as well as This Is Good. If you're not familiar with This Is Good, then we'll provide a link. But it goes along with all the stories that we've shared with Chad. It's my go-to story, like the rat is for him. And it really will help you look at adversity in a different light. So this is good.
Yes. And we'll put all Chad's links and these links in the show notes so you can find them there. You can also find the gear at confidentathleteprogram.com/store and get it there. Again, thank you, Chad. Appreciate you being on the show with us.
What if in just 4 weeks from now, your daily habits, your mindset, and your results look completely different? Better, sharper, more focused. That's exactly what the 4 Week Win Challenge is all about. It's for high achievers just like you who are tired of starting over and are ready to build routines that actually stick. You'll get the tools, the accountability, and the momentum to crush your goals and build a version of yourself that you're proud of, starting now. So if you're serious about taking the next step, go to jeffhagee.com/win and let's make the next 4 weeks a turning point in your life.
Thank you for joining us on Challenger Deep, Athletes Rising Above Adversity. We hope these stories inspire and equip you to tackle life's challenges head on. Don't forget to visit www.confidentathleteprogram.com/Challenger Deep to get all of our free resources from the book, your copy of our book, and access to 2 free weeks of the Confident Athlete Program. Remember, in life, adversity only visits the strong. It stays forever with the weak. Let's rise above together. See you next time.